Alright, you bastards, it is Some-Belgian-prepper, and today we're going to talk about 30 survival uses for plastic boxes or containers. And we're not going to talk about the bullshit of you can put this inside of it, you can put this inside of it. No, we're going to talk about specific survival uses for bug in, bug out, that kind of scenarios. So let's start first talking about what sort of boxes would you need, because there are a lot of type of boxes with pros and cons. So let's talk about first of all, what kind of box would do you want? Do you want translucent boxes, or do you want boxes that you cannot see through? So what are in my personal opinion, I would say get the boxes that you can see through, translucent, or however you say that, because if you many people would say get the boxes that you cannot see inside of them, because if there is a burglar or people are robbing your place, they don't know what's inside of each box. So it's like they have to waste time by opening all of them. I would say that does not weigh in on the benefits of everything I'm going to tell you about the see-through boxes. And the biggest positive thing about it is you can see what's inside of them. As you can see, there are a lot of boxes here, and if I would not put tags on them, like you can see, or if I would completely forgot to do that, then I would probably forget what's inside of what. So if it's translucent, you can just walk past and you can see, oh, that's what I need. You don't have to open a box and get all the stuff out, and sometimes something gets inside, getting the downside, not the downside, believe it, that you have to do like, what's inside of here, because it can sink down with everything. So I would say get translucent boxes. How big does a box has to be? Depending on what your needs are. I would always say there are three types of boxes. You got big boxes like this. You got medium boxes, which are some things like these, and you got small boxes. These are types like these. So why? The big boxes are for obviously big stuff. The between boxes are for those are medium, because sometimes you will have stuff that is just a bit too small to get inside of the big box and takes too little space, or too big for in the small boxes. So you need something in the middle, and that is usually the one that will have a lot of room left, because it's something between the balance. And for all the very small stuff, I would say all the stuff that fits in the palm of your hands, keep them in the small boxes, because of those things you will have a lot of them. But a lot of them means that if it's a lot, it fits in a small box, like you can see with all these emergency blankets, for example. There's a lot of blankets, but they fit in a small box. All right. What type of box in strength do you need? Because there are boxes that are really strong, and there are boxes that you can just that will shatter the moment you drop them, or they are a little bit too long in the sun. I would say that's on your own budget, because if you're going to need a lot of boxes, yeah, you're probably going to not you will probably not do too much stuff with them, hauling it all around, and there will be less chance that it will break, or you will let it fall. So it's more for real storage. So I would say get the cheaper ones, and for certain delicate stuff, for example, if you got electronics or tools that are might a little bit heavier, take the box that is more of a more quality, that you will not pick it up and by the weight it will crack through the bottom. So if it's a little bit heavier stuff, so I would say get, for the most stuff, cheap boxes will not be a problem, but always get a few boxes that will, especially if they are large, that they can take the weight that will fit inside of them and they will not break through it. And if they are sensitive, like with electronics, you do not want the sun will start to melt or get through it and damage what's inside of them, that is probably a little bit more sensitive to sunlight. For example, if you got something like uh, night vision, you don't want sunlight getting through. So make your decisions, and most of them will be the cheap boxes, is what I'm trying to say. But get a few good boxes just for that kind of stuff. All right, so let's start from now on with every survival use. So we'll use the power of editing to do this. So in the next clip, we'll start with number 1 of 30. All right, the first one is, and it is actually unofficial, so this is not the first one of the 30. You can keep your books inside of them, especially my books, if you're interested. The first one is called Bloody Crosses. It's a detective series that I have written. The link will be in the description. The second one is the Jason Murders. They're all in Dutch. The link will be in the description. So, yeah, if you're interested, take a look. All right, the first thing I would say is how easy it is to move stuff or to bug out. If you got all this survival stuff and you have a bug out vehicle and time is running short, it is handy that you can just, everything for cooking is in that, tools are in that you can just in a few holes bring it to your car, and you don't have to gather it all around to put it inside of the car and losing time. And also for moving, for any person that is probably moving a lot, and I'm talking mostly about persons that will renting. If you rent a house or an apartment, there's a bigger chance that you will probably move in the future. So having all these kind of boxes just will make it easier to move out, or during, like I said, during a bug out scenario. And many people would say, yeah, but if you got robbers or looters, they can just take all the boxes. Well, they're going to do that anyway. So yeah, that's not an argument to not have boxes, is what I'm trying to say, and you will only make it more difficult for yourself. All right, we're going to the next one. Another way to filter water, you can make a filtration system with this. What you can do is fill up with a layer of activated charcoal powder, and then a layer sand, and then again a layer charcoal powder, again a layer sand, and you keep doing that, and that way you will have a sort of filtration system. And if you have a small hole in the middle where the weight will probably get a little bit down, then it can drip inside the container to catch it. But be careful, because this is something very delicate if you want to make it 100% drinkable. What do I mean by this? Because, like I said, if the charcoal will take out most of the impurities, but there is still a chance that that some bacteria and some viruses will get through. But there is an ancient historical technique, which is the same technique, but you keep doing this till there is a sort of layer of, it's like a green algae kind of layer that will form on top, and that is some bacterial area that will kill off all the pathogens before they reach the downside. That is something that can take a month to get, because you have to keep pouring water inside of it till you get this sort of bacterial growth that will kill off all the other bacteria, and only good water will seep through. It is something very meticulous, but it is a way to make an improvised water filter as in a historical way. I would say look it up, the specifics of it, and on how to do this, because this, perhaps I will do it in the future, but it is very improvised, very crude, and it takes some knowledge and a little bit of risk. So be careful with this one. Next thing that you can do, if you live near a river or the sea, and you want to and you have salt water and you want to filter it out, what you can do is you take your plastic box, you take a glass with or a can or whatever with the salt water, you put it inside of the box, close the box, and you set it in sunlight. Then the water from the salt water in the glass will evaporate, get to the top of the lid, and it will, especially if you put it a little bit in an angle, then the condense will slide off the top and get down inside of the box, and then you will have condensed water, and the salt remains in the middle within the glass. So that way you can turn salt water into fresh water, and you will have a way to get salt as a bonus, so to say. So going to the next one. So while we are at it at water, you can filter water by keeping the box inside of sunlight. The UV of the sun rays will kill the pathogens inside of this water, but you will need to watch out that the water was not too contaminated with dirt, because otherwise you can get some things like algae growing inside of them. So it is an improvised way to filter water, but yeah, you have to be very careful about this, because depending on how much sunlight there is, it can take 8 to even 3 days of sunlight before this is sterilized by UV or from sun rays. But on a very sunny day like this, it can perhaps take 6 to 8 hours, but it is very improvised, so I would not recommend it, but it is an option to do. Another important water related stuff is catching rainwater. You can do it by either just opening the box, just let it rain, but this is the reason why you have to look what kind of box, because this lid I can use by poking a hole in the middle or multiple. All the rain will be catch inside much more easier, and because it's only filled with small holes, insects like mosquitoes, flies and other bugs will not get inside of them because of the small holes and the lid. So that's something that you can do to prevent parasites, insects mudding up your water, but always filter it, whether it's fresh from the rain or not. It's if from the outside, just don't take any chances. And another reason, this is also the reason why I say that you, for certain reasons, you need a good quality box, because if this is full of water, this will weigh a lot. If you pick it up and it's a poor quality material, it can just snap by the weight beneath it, and you will lose all that water by transporting this water. So that's another thing you can do. Another thing is, especially when the electricity is going down and you need to wash your clothing. As long as you have soap and you have some, you can do it with hands, you can do it with an improvised plunger, or in my case, that is my washing plunger. You can just put the clothes inside of them and start to push the soapy water through the fibers as an improvised washing tub. So that's another thing that you can do. You can also do it by on the sink, in the sink or something, to keep the water in, or to reuse it later on. But as an improvised washing tub for clothing, or perhaps even for washing your hands later on, it's a possibility as if there is no electricity. Another way to use it is as transport, and I'm not talking about in moving, but using it to transport more goods in an easier way. For example, if you got smaller boxes like this, you can put them all in a bug out bag, carry them on your back, and transport whatever you have to from point A to point B, whether it's for giving food or some other tool stuff, gear, to a family member, a friend, someone in need, or for bartering, the market, whatever. And you can even put it like this. This is a wooden one, but you can put it on top of your bike or at the back and use it as an improvised way to transport stuff. So that's another one. Another way, and I was telling you not going to tell about anything you can store with it, but certain things it is important. For example, this is my tinder box. Everything that is very flammable is to start a fire is inside of this. This has cotton, this has washing machine plushie, this has birch tree bark, and also some char cloth, metal wool. So yeah, that's something that you don't want a spark nearby, and that could be handy, and it can keep moisture out of them. So for this, a plastic box would be perfect. If there is a flood or a dam breaks or whatever, and you need something to float, a box full of air will do that. But make sure that either the lid is airtight. In this case, it will not be. So what you want to do then is either tape the sides off with isolation tape that no air will be able to escape, or you put it upside down and all the air will be here trapped, and you can hold on to the box or build an improvised raft with multiple boxes that you can stack on top of each other and bind them together, or use some sort of tape that is water resistant. So in an improvised way, as an improvised flotation device. This will not be elegant, but you can use these boxes as improvised tables and stools. I'm not going to sit on one because these boxes are not designed for them, but if you got certain boxes that can handle the weight of a person, you can use them as stool. Or if it's not strong enough, you can use it as an improvised table. When I was doing constructions with some friends, what we would do in the night after the constructions is we didn't have tables, we didn't have stools, so we used buckets and boxes like this as improvised tables on the construction site. So that's another thing you can do if things are getting tight, or you need to use the room. For example, even if this is filled up with stuff and there is no room for extra tables or something, just put it in the middle and it's being used for another purpose, and you got storage free. So another thing, if you got something like a freezer or something and the electricity is going down, whether it's for, I would say, the moment you know that it's going to take more than an hour, you cannot take the risk that all of the meat, fish or whatever you got in your freezer will thaw and you cannot refreeze it again. So I would say be ready to eat it to eat it as first before it goes bad, or for everything that you can take and use it in a box and fill it up with aluminum foil, the lid, the sides. Do multiple layers so there is room between each layer. Make sure no heat can escape, and that way you will have an improvised not freezing box, but an improvised cooling box till the refrigerator will work again, perhaps. So yeah, is it efficient? No. Can it make it last longer? Perhaps, but it's better than doing nothing. And I made a whole video about what to do if your freezer is going out. For example, do not open the door. Freezers that will be something like this, the cold will get outside it. And by the way, I made a whole video about this, so I will not say all these rules, but you can make an improvised cooling box with these plastic containers. Next thing I would say is protect anything you want from mice, rodents, insects, rats, all that kind of stuff, flies. It is very important that for certain things, especially if you store food, that none of these animals or insects can reach it. Next one I would say is use it as a watering system for your gardening. For example, if you got 4 pots, you can put one of these boxes in the middle. If you got 4 holes, you can make it drip constantly water without the water evaporating constantly away. So it's more efficient to keep the soil around your plants moist. So with this, you can store them. You can put it with 4 buckets, not buckets, or pots where you grow potatoes. Put these here, 4 small holes in each corner, and that way you can keep it soiled and watered during even hot days. So that's another thing you can do as an improvised way. Another thing is you can use it for hidden caches, you know, from Instalker. If you want that, if you have a fear that robbers will come in, people like looters, or even the government that will try to do a raid on your house and confiscate certain stuff, you can take boxes like this. Make sure that they are that the lid is very tight and that there is no air or moisture coming in. You can use some extra tape around them and bury them somewhere in the garden and take it on for later on. And that way also insects, rodents cannot get inside of them. The cold, the heat, if you bury them deep enough, depending where. But it can be very handy to secure or hide some stuff that you do not want anyone else to find. Another thing you can do, and it is especially if you live in an apartment or you want to grow much food as an improvised way with gardening, use it as a gardening bed. And it's not only outside that you fill it with dirt, make a few holes inside of them, that there is still water inside of them, but too much water will will leak outside. You can do that, and there is also options for inside. For example, if you grow mushrooms, you can use one of these, and especially with a lid, it can, especially if you do some strategic holes, you can grow mushrooms inside of them, and that way you have an extra food source, nutrient source, growing outside. You can place it in the sun. If it's too hot, you can take it out of the sun. Be very carefully, because certain plastics can break easily after prolonged sun exposure, and that way, if you move the boxes for the gardening, it can break or get damaged. So be very carefully about that. Another thing during disasters or shit hit the fan or breaking of the rule of law or whatever scenario you got, a big thing that not many people think about is the losing, or not termination, but that professional garbage man will not pick up the trash. And yeah, that could be very problematic, especially if you live in an apartment. So if you got big buckets or something like this, you can try to use it as a storage, as an improvised trash can, to keep the trash inside of your house if you cannot leave it, or especially if it has a lid, to prevent smells from coming out or attracting insects or rodents, that kind of stuff. So as an improvised trash bag, it can be very handy. Another thing you can do with this is ferment alcohol or pine tree soda. I made a video about how to do these things, but if you want to make a distillery in an improvised way, fermenting meat from honey or from sugar, it is a way to make alcohol, vinegar, and you can do things like disinfectant, for bartering, for cleaning, all that kind of stuff. If you know how, for example, you can take one of those distillery buckets and use the same principle with this box. There are many recipes to make your own alcohol that is fermented without any special use, but be very carefully about these kind of fermenting processes, because if you're not familiar with them, you can poisoning yourself or others, and that could be dangerous. So be very carefully if you're trying out these techniques. Like I said before, it's not only about surviving, it's also about living. And sometimes, if you're with your friends, you want to goofing around, or you want to do some improvised music, like with the Blue Man Group, you can just take one of these boxes and start to use them as a sort of drum. I know it sounds a bit ridiculous, but these can boost your morale with either humor, music, and pastime, or during a game, improvised game, with neighbors or whatever. Use it as a way to boost up the gaming with some improvised music. So might sound stupid, but we are talking about every aspect of survival possibilities. Another gardening tip that you can do it is use this for starting seedlings, whether it's with a small amount of soil inside of them. With seeds, you can grow them to seedlings. You can take the strongest ones out and use them for planting in your gardening, or you can put this full of seeds and you can pour water inside them, some air holes, and after a week or two, all the seeds will have started to show some growing, and you can either use it for planting, or you can eat the seeds, because the moment the seeds start to sprout, yeah, sprouting is the English name, then you will have more vitamins and nutrients from the seeds that you eat. So if you got, like me, a lot of seeds like corn, tarwe, gerst, other types of kernels. If you got those, you will have more nutrients for them than if you are going to eat them in another way. So that could be also a very handy way to get more nutrients during a disaster. Another thing you can use it for is for as an alarm system. There are different ways you can do it, whether it's putting it against the door, somebody opens it from the other side. That noise can, yeah, perhaps I need some more nails, but you can do it that way. Another way you can do it, and it is not the best place to do this, put the light on, yeah, whatever. You can put it on, yeah, I'll do it from here, otherwise you cannot see it. You can put the box on top of the door, and if you put it more in the corner, and it will fall down. I will not let it fall down, otherwise the box will break. But somebody opens the door even more, falls down, and as you can hear, it can make a lot of sounds. And use your imagination to use it as an improvised alarming system. I live on the countryside, and one time a year there is something we call the pulling of the toads, if you translate it exactly, but it's a period where toads are going from the place that they are living back to their birthing grounds, like ponds, and mate and lay eggs. But the problem is they have to get over the road, and there is a lot of cars. So what they would do is they would set a little fence on the side of the road, and in the opening of the fences they bury boxes like this inside of them. Toads will be guided by the fence, try to cross, and they will be falling inside of them, cannot get out, and volunteers will take the boxes up, put them on the other side of the street, and they can get to their birthing grounds. The same thing you can apply for catching small animals. For example, you can use it as an improvised. Of course, you need a little bit deeper box for rats and bigger animals like that, but you can use it to catch smaller critters, whether it's toads, mice for pest control, catching rats, even rats for eating, muscus rats, like my grandfather used to eat, and perhaps even small rabbits or that type of game. But for that you need a very taller box. But what you can do is, the benefit is, if it's very smooth on the side, the animals will not be able to claw themselves or climb this from themselves out. And if you go to see your catch, you can just put the lid on top of it and take them with you. Of course, leave some holes for the animal. So for catching small game or pest control, this is also a very good idea. Sometimes it's not only about survival during disaster scenarios or SHTF scenarios. Sometimes you need a little bit fun, and then you need to use your imagination to come up with some fun games. For example, Mist. Use it as an improvised way to keep yourself, the children, your partner, or whoever you're with busy by creating a game like throwing it inside of the box or whatever you can come up with. Leave it in the comments if you know another type of game that you can do it this way. But yeah, it's not only about surviving, it's also about living. A thing that I used to do, but I do it less because it's became too salty, is store salted meat. So what I would do is, I would have a box like this, I would put a layer salt and a layer meat. Then again, layer salt, layer meat. And then I had a box full of salted meat that I could store for a very long time. The only downside is, as you can guess, the meat was very salty. But it was dry. I never got sick from it. But if you got salt enough, you can do this as an improvised way to store a large amount of meat with salting, and make sure that the meat is in thin slices and stored between layers of salt each, and that the box is open, because if you put a lid on top of it, the salted meat, and the moisture vaporizes, you want it to vaporize and not go back. So no lid if it's with salted meat. And the last thing I would say is use it as a bug out box. Why a bug out box? Because not everyone has a bug out bag or a rucksack or whatever. Sometimes you will be the person with a bug out bag, but perhaps your children, perhaps your partner, neighbors, friends, family, whoever is with you for a bug out scenario, they can carry the box and fill it up with stuff extra for themselves, and you can take the main stuff, and they can take lighter stuff but necessary stuff. So that could be very, very handy for that scenario. We were talking earlier about flood and use it as an improvised flotation device, but if you know there is a flood or there is a risk of it, you can take all your electronics or sensitive stuff, family pictures, the cell phones, laptops, whatever, and put them inside of these type of boxes to make sure that they will not get damaged, because it need to be boxes. I wouldn't say not only put it higher, because it still be dangerous if you can just put it higher. It can, if the foundations are breaking a little bit, they can fall down. If there is a fire because of electricity which mixed with water, it will be a risk for a smoke damage, for example. So yeah, I would say put them in a sturdy box, because even if the box falls down and floats to get in the room with the water, it still will be protected. So flood protection is also very overlooked. Another thing is, and that is more for people who live in apartments, as an improvised toilet. That is actually the same thing as the trash, but you can also do it with toilets. So if you got a big box like this or a small one, and you live, especially in apartment, because if you live on the countryside or in a regular house, you can just dump your shit or piss outside. But in an apartment, you cannot do that, especially if you cannot go out on the streets or public sewage systems are not working. For a long time, I don't know how much shit a person produces, perhaps I should look it up someday, but if you can fill this up and keep it closed, that could be prevent so much disease, animals like flies that will get to it. And you can, if you got something like lime, I think it's called lime in English, that you can cover it up and make sure that it will not grow. You can make it last longer and make it less smelly, especially with a lid, lime powder or whatever. I don't think it's lime powder, but you know what I mean if you know what I mean. So that's another thing that is very important and often overlooked, because waste management is probably one of the biggest dangers you will have to get under control because of diseases, and diseases are the biggest killers during a disaster. So this was my take on 30 survival uses for plastic containers or boxes, and yeah, I would say get a load of these, buy them in bulk, and you will not regret it. You can always use a plastic box. And some people will say, why don't you get metal boxes? They are too heavy, too expensive, they can rust, and yeah, they can get too hot. Plastic boxes, they conduct heat and cold a little bit less. You can see through them, they are less expensive, and they will not rust. And you can see, like I said, you can see inside of them and take them with you. So yeah, all right. Looks like the steam train is passing by my house, so that's the noise that you will be hearing. All right, so we're done now. Yeah, we're done now. So if you got any other survival uses for plastic boxes, let me know in the comments. I'm always eager to learn new techniques, or perhaps some historical techniques that I can perhaps implement with these. And like, subscribe, all the good stuff, and see you in the next video. Cheers.